Hi, my name is Stephen Mathai, and I will be doing a present psychological analysis on the main character of American Psycho, Patrick Bateman. So, Patrick Bateman is the CEO of a wealthy investment company in New York City during the late 1980s, and his daily routine consists of a very rigorous morning routine where he applies several skincare products and hair care products and spends a lot of time on his outward appearance. And then, in his work days, it mainly consists of him listening to music, watching television, and going to lunch meetings with his investor friends from the company. And then at the end of the day, he usually goes to like parties or dinners with his fiance or with an investor friend or any other woman he sees. And overall, he doesn't seem to very care much for his work, and it doesn't really work at all for him. And he essentially does all these things to blend in as much as possible to mask the violent urges and thoughts that he has. And he actually does this so well that characters at times mistake him for someone else. And as for his relationships, he isn't invested in those either, doesn't really care about them, and doesn't express any true emotion. So his primary goal throughout the film is to blend in as much as possible while simultaneously fulfill his violent urges by killing people. A potential diagnosis for him is a personality disorder called antisocial personality disorder, which is defined as a personality or someone often violates the rights of others, deceitful of personal gain and fleeting pleasure, and they feel no remorse or guilt for any wrongdoings they commit. And this essentially basically ties into Bateman's violent urges and thoughts, and the methods he uses to kill his victims. And essentially, a cause for this may be uh, um, related to the culture that he is surrounded by, mainly Western American culture. And essentially, this effect is defined in this research done by Gada in 2018, where essentially the expectations and requirements from an individual in modern societies have risen and may influence the identity and adjustment of a person. This affects mood, behavior, and results in emotional instability, and potentially some traits of PDs. And essentially, because of the high demand and expectation that what Western American culture has on Patrick, and that essentially it's expected of him to do the things that a CEO of an investment company does, it pressures him to do all these things that he doesn't want to, and only furthers his desire to satisfy his violent urges. So, if he were to go to a therapist in the film, they may give a similar diagnosis and attribute it to these cultural causes. However, not all cultures may diagnose Bateman with the same thing, since they may consider different factors, or may not factor in cultural factors at all when giving a diagnosis. And in supporting evidence, he demonstrates several instances for mainly two symptoms. One symptom would be impulsivity or failure to plan ahead, and the lack of remorse is indicated by being indifferent or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. And these are shown when, at the end of the film, after breaking up with his fiancee, he proceeds to go on a killing spree, killing several people while the police are in pursuit. And then he calls his lawyer and tells him and essentially confesses all the things that he's did to them. And he essentially does all of this without any plan and just seemingly on an impulse. And then, for the lack of remorse symptom, one night when he's walking home from work, he has a conversation with a homeless man and seemingly wants to help him at first, but then he proceeds to insult him and kill him. And the next morning, he doesn't give any second thought about it and doesn't express any form of guilt or remorse for what he did. And also, in a study done on ASPD patients, it showed that 71.9% of them had a prevalence to impulsive aggression and 28.1% of prevalence to premeditated aggression. And this the impulsivity certainly applies to Patrick Bateman in his case, as shown in his killing spree at the end of the film. And the potential treatment plan for Patrick Bateman is through a process called mentalizing, which is essentially approaching challenges in life through a different way other than violence, and essentially involves changing your mode of thinking. And it is certainly a long and arduous process since it's establishing a whole new mode of thinking, but it may not be too difficult for Patrick Bateman to do this, since he doesn't see a therapist at any point in the film. So there is potential that if he were to have that person that he could confide in, and a person that truly cared about his well-being, it could result in positive mental progress. And he certainly has the time and resources to do it, since he doesn't really care about his work that much and has a lot of free time. So, in conclusion, overall, it was a very interesting film, and it was difficult to diagnose Patrick Bateman with certainty, since at the end of the film, it reveals that he never actually did and all the murders that he committed. So it never actually confirms that he actually did all those things. So the app the way or the portrayal of ASPD in this film is not entirely accurate, but he still had those violent thoughts and urges even if he didn't commit all those things. So it still applies. So the portrayal of ASPD isn't entirely inaccurate, but there is still a necessary degree of caution, since if a film incorrectly portrays someone with a disorder like this, or this disorder in general, it could lead to negative consequences, such as the public viewing it as bad or some other consequence. And then here are all my references.